to be open-minded. I think you've got to ready yourself for the unexpected. There's a lot of grace in allowing people to not only be who they are, but be who they want to become, and provide them support and space to do that, and encouragement, and see the best in people, and know that deep down we are all so much more alike and we're so much more connected than we choose to remember. People have two key human fears, in my opinion. My firm has this belief system, I'm not even sure where we got it from, but we all have drank the same Kool-Aid, where the first key human fear is I won't be good enough, and the second one is therefore I won't be loved. And if you can help people vanquish those fears, they will show up to you and the world and society in an incredibly different way.
Dr. Becky Winkler is a corporate psychologist who assesses and develops executive talent. She works for private equity, asset management, and corporate clients throughout the world. She has led research on learning agility and predictors for executive success in collaboration with leading universities. Becky has conducted over 1,000 executive-level assessments and coached numerous executives to break through performance. It is the profound connection and meaningful perspective she shares with others that inspires her work. Becky helps people more fully realize themselves, their talents, skills, or aspirations, whether in her professional life traveling the globe or as a board chair of college-preparatory public charter schools serving students in educationally underserved communities. And she does it with a vitality and insight that amazes. Becky, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. What do you say when people ask you what you do?
I say I'm a corporate psychologist.
What does that mean?
To me, it means that I am engaged in a more preventative field of psychology. We spend so much of our lives at work that I help people find places where not only will they be able to find meaning and purpose, but also help reach their full potential, also work better with their colleagues, so maybe they won't go home and kick the dog and get in a fight with their spouse.
What does it mean to be a corporate psychologist? You're not psychoanalyzing a company.
That's correct. I'm actually not qualified to talk about your mother for too long, so we can take away the couches during this time. It really is all about, my degree is in industrial and organizational psychology. In Europe, they call it the psychology of work. Here, we managed to vote down a name change a couple years ago because we really like the complicated nature of saying industrial organizational psychology.
What is that degree about?
My classes were in things like performance management, leadership, motivation, organizational theory, executive coaching, things of that nature.
You go into companies and you do what?
Depending on the mandate, I work a lot in private equity, some hedge funds, some corporations, on talent. So oftentimes we're asked to come in and do individual executive assessments. That could either be for pre-employment selection or for due diligence purposes. Before my investors buy a company, they want to know the human capital that they're backing. I'll often do executive coaching as well. That's often helping people reach their full potential. Sometimes there's different reasons we're brought in, but that's the most common reason, to prepare someone for a new position or help them onboard effectively. Also team building, helping people get along better at work, see each other more authentically, and develop really solid relationships from which the business can grow. And lastly, looking at organizations and doing organizational assessment and development. How can we make this place an even better place to work? How might it need to change from a structural perspective in order to get it ready to scale for growth? People are huge puzzles, and the companies in which they work are only add a layer of complexity and nuance to the whole thing.
So one of the things you mentioned was identifying talent. What is the talent that you're seeking to find?
It depends on the role. So when we talk about giving people ratings or rating people on any dimension, it's not a rating of worth by any stretch of the imagination. It's a rating of fit to that company. And it's very contextually dependent. So we've had the same person come and be assessed for two different positions. They were a clear fit for one and a clear misfit for the other, but the person didn't do anything wrong or different. So it depends on what you're asking that person to do in that role. That determines what kind of talent you're looking for.
Do you have a different set of tools for the context that is relevant?
Mostly it's a structured interview, chronological structured interview. It lasts about 4.5 hours, traces over their life history. It's essentially a sampling exercise, and you're looking for trends. It's a very balanced interview where we cover both the highs and the lows of one's life, which is awesome if you are curious about people. It's a constant playground. Some of my clients do want me to use psychometrics, as we call them, which are essentially just personality tests or cognitive ability tests, but that's the minority.
What do you alert to when you're having those interviews?
It depends on what I'm being asked to be alert for. There is a core set of characteristics that you know are going to be good no matter what the person is doing in terms of the role. So for example, I love self-awareness. The research we've done has shown it's the #1 predictor of performance. I think not only in corporate America, but likely in life, because if you know your strengths and weaknesses, then you have a fighting chance of saving you and others from yourself.
What are other key predictors of success?
So we also look for resilience, one's ability to bounce back from setbacks and failures. We also look for someone who's comfortable with failure, making a mistake. It often leads to greater self-awareness because they're not afraid to kind of put themselves out there. They care less about what other people think, but not in a bad way. We look for people who have high degrees of ability to assess talent, meaning they are willing to build a high-performing team around them. I think a lot of people are afraid to hire people who are smarter or better than they are. They're worried about getting shown up. But honestly, the best leaders I see are those who put themselves last and know that they're only as good as the people they have working around them, and they're committed to making sure that they have the best and brightest and best suited for the roles and aren't afraid to make a change, because that's the greatest source of compassion.
What is the talent that you need to assess other people's talent? What makes for a good corporate psychologist?
Self-awareness, knowing what you're not good at, knowing what your own biases are, because you are a human and we all bring them. So having an awareness of where you might be biased and how to guard against that is very useful. I think having the ability to relate to people, to build rapport so that they want to tell you their story and they don't feel awkward or uncomfortable doing that is really important. And having an analytical mind, the ability to look at people kind of like Sudoku puzzles and be able to unpack what's really going on and figure out and be able to predict through the analytical process how they're going to perform in a role.
How would you assess your own talent against those measurements?
Well, my clients and colleagues seem to think I'm okay at it. I still have a job. I haven't been fired. I'm now a partner. So I'm really good at fooling everyone around me. Either that or I'm halfway decent, but I also know that I can talk too fast, for example, and there's a host of other qualities that aren't that great, which I'm happy to go into if you want.
Are you aware of your own blind spots?
Yes, I think so. Because I've been measured 8 ways to Sunday, I've taken about 85 personality tests, and I have very courageous colleagues who have shot me straight for the past 9 years and told me all the glorious and multiple ways in which I've screwed things up. And we do 360-degree measures. We take our own medicine, and we evaluate each other, and so I get feedback all the time from people, which is a great thing.
Mm-hmm. Becky, you co-wrote an article entitled Improve Your Ability to Learn, published in Harvard Business Review, in which you discuss learning agility. What is learning agility?
There's a lot of different organizations that talk about this, so I'll talk about it in the Center for Creative Leadership and Teachers College of Columbia University Vernacular, which is essentially, and of course it's been refined since then, but the way that it existed when we analyzed it was it consisted of 4 enabling behaviors and 1 disabling behavior, so to speak. So those enabling behaviors were innovating, being willing to challenge the status quo, risking, being willing to put yourself out there and potentially fail, try the uncomfortable, performing, which is about being mindful and staying present in the moment so that your lizard brain isn't taking over the more rational part and you can access all your faculties, including listening to what's going on around you, reflecting, which is the ability to engage in quiet periods of thought, whether that's conducting post-mortem analyses or using counterfactual thinking to explore the alternatives that you didn't take. So those are the 4 enabling behaviors. The unabling behavior or disabling behavior is defensiveness, which is being closed in the face of feedback. It's hard to be told what you're not doing well. And trust me, that was one of my flaws early on. I get very sensitive, I shut down, but then I always come back and say thank you. I'd like to think I'm a little more graceful only because of the amount of feedback that we give and receive at work. But I think that's probably the hardest one for us as humans because we have such a strong self-protective instinct.
Is talent something that can be quantified and compared?
To an extent, yes. I think you need to have a very specific scorecard, and some scorecards are more quantifiable than others. So, for example, an operations role, a sales role, I think you can quantify those fairly easily. HR role, a talent role, when you start dealing with squishy indicators, and anytime you see culture on a scorecard, it's of incredible importance, and it's a little tougher to quantify, at least from an individual assessment perspective. Of course, there's engagement surveys and things you can use to quantify it, but I'd say, for the most part, as a headline answer that you're seeking, yes.
Becky, there's this character on television named Wendy Rhodes who is a character for a show called Billions. And she works with Wall Street traders and hedge fund managers, and she's managing these big volatile egos. And she coaxes them, and she encourages them, and she's tough when she needs to be. Are you a bit like Wendy Rhodes?
You know, it's funny you should ask that. My female colleagues and I get that question a lot as we've compared notes over the years. I'll tell you that I started subscribing to Showtime just because I needed to answer that question for myself, even though I never really watched cable before that. To some extent, yes, in the sense that I'm willing to tell people the uncomfortable truth, and I do work with a lot of MOTUs, my shorthand for Masters of the Universe, who are really just lovely people deep down. And I'm also not like her because my wardrobe extends to more beyond little black dresses, and I try to keep my pirate language to a minimum, at least inside the office. And I'm not a clinician, so I can't really diagnose anxiety. Those are the people I refer out to the Wendy Rhodes of the universe.
But at the end of the day, doesn't it come back to your unique skills?
When we're searching for new consultants, there is a certain amount of raw ability we look for as it relates to high IQ, high EQ, ability to build rapport. Some of these foundational skills we know are important. Then absolutely, we do have a very rigorous training and apprenticeship model. So there's no question that that's part of it. I would also say, though, that feedback, coaching, and looking at our own dirty stuff, frankly. So every year we go back to our clients and we say, how did we do? We said these people would perform like this. We said these people would perform like this. How accurate were we? And that courage that it takes to look in the mirror, and if you screw it up, to really pay attention to those. So when we say our prediction rate is 90% plus, that's an actual statistics that we got because we're willing to ask the question to find that out, in addition to the research we've done with Cornell that has shown that our grades do lead to the ability to predict revenue, EBITDA, board, feedback, etc.
So you're evaluating people and giving a recommendation that could impact a person's career. Do you ever feel like you got it wrong?
I have for sure gotten it wrong. You know more about the false positives than the false negatives, of course. So my recommendation is just one piece of data. My clients can ignore me if they want to. Oftentimes they don't, because my most loyal clients are the ones who have ignored me and it hasn't panned out well. So people will surprise you. I will tell you, however, that as scientific as you can get around prediction, if I am not recommending someone for a job, I take that very seriously. I do not take that lightly. And I have to be at integrity with my own recommendation. So all I can do in those instances is lay out the facts, present the case that I'm seeing that's leading me to make that decision, and then the client is the one that ultimately says, yes, we agree with you, or no, we don't. And then reference checks and the like also provide that extra layer of security or additional knowledge that helps you be firmer in your decision.
What surprises you about the work that you do?
How endlessly fascinating I can find people, despite the fact that I'm using the same frickin' hammer over and over and over to chip away.
Tell me more.
So it's the same interview, right? And you'd think it would get old. And I think from the outside looking in, you would think it would get old. But I just find it endlessly fascinating. My favorite thing is to really understand a business and then to learn someone's life story. There truly is no greater level of intimacy. And granted, sometimes people aren't necessarily signing up for it. They might not want to go through the process. But luckily, there's also research that shows that when we talk about ourselves, we activate the same parts of our brains that, sex, drugs, rock and roll, all those other things activate. And so people leave feeling pretty good about it, even if they didn't expect to.
Another aspect of your job is coaching. How do you coach someone?
I think you have to, first of all, they have to want to be coached. And they have to not want it to be a dirty secret. because we believe very strongly in enrolling the stakeholders around them in order to make sure that you ready the environment for change and experimentation. Then you have to do some sort of diagnostic to understand the you are here spot on that map of their development. So that's often a 360, sometimes a developmental assessment, sometimes both, sometimes personality measures, whatever. You find out what their goals are. You make sure those goals are in alignment with the organization so that you pick the right North Star that you're marching towards. And then you just do whatever you can to champion that person, hold them accountable for what they say they want, design thought experiments, design behavior experiments, and enroll others so that you can really help them develop self-awareness so they know how they're showing up, and give them a set of tools that maybe they didn't have access to before that enables them to get what they want. But my clients in coaching, our philosophy is they are creative, resourceful, and whole. So I'm not there to fix them or tell them what to do. I'm there to help them see their own brilliance and help them get out of their own way so they can achieve what they want.
Who determines that the coaching was successful?
Depends. I think there's a couple different layers of measurement there. We do ask the person themselves, get the self-feedback. We also conduct a post-coaching survey, often using the same questions that they scored lowest on to see what was the change, what was the nature of the delta, and we've come up with an average of 42% pre and post scores on those things, where the people around them are saying, yeah, this person has legitimately changed their behavior.
Becky, you read people professionally. You're highly skilled at it. It's what you do. Are you similarly skilled reading people in your personal life?
I think it depends. Dating, not so much. My colleagues and friends and family love to rib me endlessly about the trail of exes I leave in my wake. And the thing is people don't realize it's a little uncomfortable to interview someone for 4.5 hours on a date. You often can't get away with it without them thinking you're weird. So I haven't quite figured out how to incorporate my assessment interview into my dating strategy. Luckily, the guy I've been seeing for the past 6 months is incredibly lovely, and he wanted to take the personality measures at an early stage. So I said, hot damn, let's go there, and for sure, now I know what I'm getting, and I'm much better prepared for this one.
So Becky, people assess and choose each other every day. Friends, lovers, spouses, leaders. What can society learn from what you do?
That's a great question. I think it's a dance. I think you've got to be open-minded. I think you've got to ready yourself for the unexpected. There's a lot of grace in allowing people to not only be who they are, but be who they want to become, and provide them support and space to do that, and encouragement, and see the best in people, and know that deep down we are all so much more alike and we're so much more connected than we choose to remember. People have two key human fears, in my opinion. My firm has this belief system, I'm not even sure where we got it from, but we all have drank the same Kool-Aid, where the first key human fear is I won't be good enough, and the second one is therefore I won't be loved. And if you can help people vanquish those fears, they will show up to you and the world and society in an incredibly different way.
Who helps you vanquish those fears for you?
I think I grew up in a really supportive environment where I did feel like I was good enough, and I did feel like I was loved. And I think sometimes my confidence can get me in trouble, but oftentimes it does allow me to be a little goofier and color outside the lines and be a little freer. And I don't know, people either like me or they don't, and I'm okay if they like me and I'm okay if they don't.
Let's talk about how you became the person you are today. You grew up in Atlanta. What was your childhood like?
So my mother was the hare from Cicero, where Al Capone is from, outside Chicago, and my father was the tortoise from Jamaica. And so he was a first generation, or I'm a first generation American on his side, because he immigrated to this country at a very young age, and as a result, he didn't necessarily see America the same way that Americans do. And there's something really freeing about being taken out of that perspective and just being shown that there's like the secret to the meaning of life is it's all made up. So what do you want to make up? You know, and my parents both stayed at home. So my dad used to be very proud that when I would get hurt, which was often, I was an incredibly clumsy child, and I'm still an incredibly clumsy adult, that I would scream, "Mommy, Daddy, Mommy, Daddy, Mommy, Daddy," instead of just screaming for one or the other. So I was encouraged to be who I was, and if I was a chubby kid, which I was at one time, I was perfectly proportioned. As long as I came home before it was dark, I could go splash around in the creek with my friends. We could play pickle in the cul-de-sac. It was a little idyllic, you know? So not that, I mean, I had discipline, I had chores, but my parents were also the kind of people who, I vacuumed my finger up one time when I was vacuuming the floor. My mom liked to put this pet powder stuff down, and so I was always very book smart, but the whole like life smart thing still kind of working on. And I stuck my finger in the vacuum to try to get some of the pet powder up, and guess what? That didn't end so well. So I still have scars. I have this bloody, awful finger, and my mom said, you need to finish vacuuming this room. Of course, once she got the bleeding to stop, because otherwise you're gonna be afraid of vacuums for the rest of your life. I got in a horrible car accident when I was 16. Car flipped 1.5 times, landed upside down, a 75-foot ravine. My dad had me drive home, because otherwise you're gonna be afraid of cars for the rest of your life. So I was encouraged to confront my fears and kind of be a fearless kid.
Take risk, be resilient.
Yeah.
Who were you as a teenager?
Awful, atrocious. So glad I'm childless by choice, because I know there's some karmic vengeance out there waiting for me. I was rebellious. I would break any rule possible. I would talk out in class. I was a dominant, competitive little girl, so I was often, not the nicest middle schooler. Luckily, I'm still best friends with that girl today. She seemed to forgive me. We were maids of honors in each other's weddings, and thank God there wasn't social media at that time, so I couldn't do any real damage. But let's put it this way. When I graduated high school, I was voted most outrageous, and I was valedictorian, So
let's talk about your parents. You mentioned your mom and your dad.
Mm-hmm.
What did they do?
My dad was a writer, and I say was because he passed in September of 2015. My mom is just an amazing, it's interesting. She raised the kids and tended to the house, and I think it's the hardest job out there. I think people who choose to stay at home and raise children and build caring environments are doing some of the most important work in this world, and it's such a shame that it's not looked at in a way that it should be, and it's not valued the way that it should be. My mom is an incredible mom. That was what she did, and she was also an artist, and she made things around her beautiful. So whether it was the gardener, she became a master gardener, so our garden was gorgeous. She learned to technique the walls and was on the do-it-yourself channel because she did it herself. So, yeah, she was a Renaissance woman in a different kind of way.
So your mom was creative, and so was your dad, too.
Yeah.
What did your dad write?
He wrote novels, screenplays, plays, poetry, biography, autobiography. Yeah, a lot of different things. College-level English textbooks were the bread and butter, though. So that's how we were able to have food on the table. But his passion was his creative writing, and he always got critical acclaim from those works, but the commercial acclaim kind of never came.
Growing up in a creative household had what kind of influence on you today?
My parents were unusual people. So my dad loved Velcro shoes and his Smurf blue car. My mom would say and do inappropriate things all the time. And so I was given a really cool model in that I kind of wasn't given a model. I wasn't told you have to do this, you have to do that, make sure that there weren't a lot of rules on my upbringing. I definitely don't have the creativity my parents have. I don't believe at all to the same extent that they do, but I think that they kind of created a really awesome canvas, and they left it blank enough that my brother and I could fill in and create whatever we wanted, and that's a huge gift.
Do you feel the presence of your father in your life today?
No question. I do, all the time. I sense him through, I do believe in the whispers of the universe, and yes, I look for them, and I think people see what they want to see, but I feel my dad's presence. I will think about him. I will find a random note he wrote just when I needed to read that. I'll see him in my dreams. I think we're all energetically connected, and his energy is still here.
Losing someone in your life can have a profound impact on you. It can shift your perspective on what's important and what matters in your life. Did the loss of your father have that impact?
For sure, and I would say actually that the impact started a lot earlier, in the sense that, this week would have been the 40th birthday of a very dear friend that I lost back in college. And she was my first significant loss. And when you lose someone you love, man, does it just jar you out of your everyday existence. And since then, I hate to say it, but I have lost quite a few people, whether it was my high school sweetheart, all my grandparents, my dad, other friends, and you just start to pay attention to things more than you would otherwise because you realize through how fleeting life is. It's kind of like you don't really appreciate your health till you get sick. You don't appreciate the people around you until one of them just up and dies. And if it's a car accident, you have no time. So as my father was spending 23 years battling Parkinson's, I would often ask myself the question, is it better to lose someone immediately, like in a car crash, or is it better to kind of watch them deteriorate and have a chance to say goodbye? And I just think neither is great. There is no answer. So you have to just love and make sure that nothing stays unsaid as long as you're here and you have the breath to say it.
Becky, you are leading a fascinating life, and it begs the question how you came to live this life. After high school, you went to the University of Georgia, and you chose particular majors. What did you choose to study?
I chose psychology, women's studies, and Chinese.
What a combination.
Yes. A little weird.
Why did you choose those fields?
So psychology, I always knew I wanted to be a psychologist for a very shallow reason. I saw Barbra Streisand and the Prince of Tides got paid to talk to people and listen to them, and I thought that sounded like a pretty darn ideal job. So that explains that. Women's studies, I came across my senior year in high school. I went to college in the mornings and they had us write an autobiography through our parents' eyes, and through that I came to recognize both my parents came from abusive households, and that jarred me out of my suburban complacency to realize that there's a heck of a lot going on beneath the surface for every single person, and I wanted to understand power dynamics. So women's studies gave me the ability and opportunity to learn more about that. And then Chinese, honestly, I sucked at conjugating Spanish. I was awful at it. And I loved that language, but I didn't want to continue to torture myself. And my mom said, why not Japanese? So I went to my advisor and said, why not Japanese? And he said, well, Chinese is the language of the future. And I said, okay, fine, Chinese. Like, I'm not going to go in business. At least at the time, I didn't think so. Anyway, so who cares? And I remember my very first semester, I was taking women's studies. I was taking astronomy, Chinese, and music appreciation, because I was able to start as a sophomore due to the AP classes and college credits and stuff. And I said, what am I supposed to do with this, to the advisor? And he said, well, sing in Chinese to the stars, of course. It was an awesome start to college.
You went on to get an M.A. and Ph.D. in industrial and organizational psychology. How did that choice come about for you?
How much time do we have? I'll try to keep it short. So it didn't really come to me. I would say it came to me through a door shutting in my face through a joint PhD in women's studies and clinical psychology that I had my heart set on, was verbally accepted into a nascent program that shall remain unnamed for reasons of respect and libel. But essentially, they accepted me verbally, offered me full tuition, full health insurance, $1,200 a month stipend, and then there was a communication gap between the committees that conveniently happened after I had turned down the other programs I got into, where I was left high and dry.
Was that unnamed school in Ann Arbor, Michigan?
I shall never tell. So my parents sent me a lovely bouquet to work the next day after I cried on the phone with the program director for an hour that said F that university. And, at least I knew I had their support. And my mother was watching the wheels come off her typically driven daughter's wagon and said, go visit your cousin in Florida. I don't know what he does, but it's something related to psychology. I came across, learned IO, had always had my blinders on, hadn't even been open to another path because I'm hell-bent, determined, stubborn, not the most flexible person on the planet. And that has its downsides. And so when I saw IO, I fell in love with it, saw, wow, this looks like preventative psychology, and the rest is history.
And IO is industrial organizational psychology.
Indeed.
And you went on to get your PhD and become Dr. Winkler. Why?
Well, I was always told to do the best I could, and a terminal degree was automatically part of that club. My father always said, whatever you do, go to the top of your field. Don't be a lawyer, be a judge. Don't be a nurse, be a doctor. No disrespect intended to those professions. That was just my father's way of trying to tell me to not settle and go as far as I could. And so there was never any question that I wasn't going to go as far as I could, because I was raised to not think there was another way.
What were those years like for you in graduate school? Who was Becky, the outrageous smart student in graduate school?
I talked too much in class. I was too forceful of a personality at times. I'm sure I drove my classmates crazy. I was scared as all get out the first couple weeks because it just seemed like such an intimidating, overwhelming thing to have to read all these journal articles when I didn't even understand what chi-square was. And thank goodness for the people in my program. If you are going to grad school, the best advice I can give you is find a cohort where you're going to be collaborative, not competitive, because those people will become your best friends and you are going to need them because you will fall down, each of you will, and you will pick each other up. And that truly made the difference in my years there.
What was your doctorate thesis in?
I did 3 different theses throughout my education. As an undergrad, I did an honors thesis on prospective memory, how we remember to do things in the future, under Richard Marsh, rest his soul, which was really cool. I also then in graduate school did a master's thesis on sexual harassment in the Department of Defense and how coping skills actually influence outcomes, which was interesting. And then for my doctoral dissertation, I looked at an anonymous healthcare organization in Chicago and came to understand how nursing climate, particularly as it relates to safety, influences patient outcomes, specifically defined as medication errors. And there is an impact there.
Becky, you work in the world of private equity and asset management, and you have a degree in women's studies, and you are a woman. What are your thoughts about women executives and their path to success?
You know, it's an interesting question, and it's a complicated question. I will tell you that I will separate that question out. So when I think about organizations and structures and bias and power, I do think that there is no question that there are certain things hardwired into our society that make it harder for women to succeed. And as a feminist, who, by the way, the definition of feminism means you just believe in equality. Most people don't know that, and so they're threatened by it. They think it's an F word. It's not. Most of us are actually feminists because most of us believe in equality. We believe that, you know, your gender or your race should not determine your success in life. So that's what being a feminist. Nonetheless, what I will tell you is I think that because we're social creatures, bias exists in terms of like-mindedness. So we are more comfortable with people who look and sound and act and behave like us. A la the people who are in power tend to select other people who look like them because it's just naturally more comfortable from a psychosocial evolutionary biology perspective. This is not the world according to Becky. There's a lot of evidence here. I also think that patterns and the dynamics of one's life choices can impact that. And corporate America has not figured out how to make room for those different paths and define multiple paths to success. We still think there's only one path to success, which is a made-up thing that's actually not true. Then I will say that I think the more women that get to the top, the more women will continue to rise to the top, because then that similar to me bias actually starts to operate in our favor. It's funny because there's an article that recently came out in the New York Times that was referring to a man bemoaning the fact that he knew he wasn't going to get a board of directors seat because they were all going to women. And the consultant said, well, actually 70% of them still go to men. So there's also this whole fear thing operating where there's like a scarcity mindedness around the number of positions at the top. And if I get it, that means you can't. And if you get it, that means I can't. So we're not really looking for the win-win solutions. As it relates to being a woman in private equity, I will tell you that for the longest time, I was my own worst enemy. I felt like because I didn't look like anyone else in that room, that I therefore needed to be louder. I needed to be, more assertive. I needed to stand out in a positive way in order to get my credibility. And what I was doing was becoming my own worst enemy because I was acting in a way that was actually detracting from my credibility as opposed to building it.
What advice would you give then to women?
I would say the cool thing about being a woman and walking into a boardroom is the other people will look at you up and down and they can't size you up the same way they size each other up. Your watch doesn't make sense. Your tie doesn't make sense because you're not wearing one. The type of suit you're wearing doesn't make sense. So you actually have a heck of a lot more freedom and range available to show up as you are because there isn't as much of an expectation set for how you quote unquote should be showing up. And that's to your advantage.
Becky, you travel constantly to client sites all over the world. London, Monaco, Singapore, name a city. You're in airports and airplanes and hotels 3 weeks out of the month, month after month, year after year. From afar, it seems like this incredibly glamorous life that only a few people live. What are the trade-offs of a life up in the air?
Yeah, I would say that anything is what you make it, right? So your spouse is either spending life with my best friend or it's ball and chain. And both can be equally valid. It just depends on the perspective you choose to adopt. So I'm definitely living a choice-filled life in that I wouldn't want it any other way. And the trade-offs are, from the outside looking in, from someone else's perspective, that I don't have kids, but I'm not lonely. And when I think about it, I feel like I have 700 kids because of my nonprofit advocacy work and the charter school system that I'm working to build out. So if anything, it's a greater burden. But I definitely have chosen a less traditional path, and you have to be okay with that. Because I joke to my friends who have chosen to stay at home and might look at me with envy sometimes, hey, I'm the one who's gonna die alone, so don't worry too much. And I joke because, frankly, I think we all die alone. It's just something we all have in common. And it is something that, I'm not the most rooted person. I will tell you, though, that you just need to have a more diverse network of family and friends and hope they're not all in one city, and that way you get to visit them more frequently.
Talk to us about what that life is actually like. If you could describe the life of a business consultant who goes from place to place and is constantly in the air, take us through that life.
Gosh, what would I say? I would say always be open. There's a great blogger who I love, Tim Urban, and he has a model. I don't think he made it up, but he has popularized it. Happiness is reality minus expectations. So you kind of have to have your expectations set at a pretty realistic level so that delays, while yes, they're frustrating, summer, I swear, is worse than winter in terms of business travel or any kind of travel, just because these storms are crazy. So you have to be okay with just getting there, not getting there at the exact time in the exact fashion and form without a ripped, pants and torn heel, and things happen. So you have to be super appreciative of and welcoming of the messiness of life, because if you're not, you're really in for a doozy. You also have to be super organized and really have your stuff together, which includes not only from a logistics perspective. It's amazing how many times I've been on the road and I still might forget my underwear. But also, you have to have two of everything so that you do bring the contacts, you do bring the toothpaste, you do bring these things. So idiot-proofing your life is super important, super helpful. And the last thing is, I would say, be open to the connections that are available to you no matter where you are. And by that, I mean just being nice to people. Work hard, be nice is a motto of the nonprofit I support. And it's also not a bad life motto.
Can you give us an example of your travel schedule?
Last week, I was on a different plane every day, which was crazier than normal. I will tell you, this week, I came home from Tampa on Sunday. I went to Green Bay for the day on Monday, which is not as easy as it sounds. Green Bay is not an easy place to get to from here. And then I was here the rest of the week, so that was amazing. Tomorrow I go to Vegas. I'll be there through Wednesday. The next week I'm going to be in Nashville and New York. And before the month is over, I'll be in Tokyo and Singapore. So lots of different fun stuff.
What is the life that's gone unled for you?
What isn't the life that's gone unlived for me? I mean, my God, I could have been a car mechanic. I could have been a forester. I could have been teaching English as a second language in a village in Mongolia. I mean, there's just so many possibilities there. There's a really fun exercise you can do called 9 Lives, where you really explore these 9 lives and just pretend you're a cat, and just kind of go, all right, what's the first year? And don't even let time be a boundary. You could be a Scottish king in a castle in the year 1400, and it's super fun to imagine and to see what the themes are and to see what it is you're kind of hungering for, maybe what an unmet need is. It's just a really fun reflection exercise.
Well, having played that game, are there unmet needs or themes that have emerged for you?
Not really, only because I'm not dead yet. So I would say for sure I'm not, I hope I haven't reached my full potential. If I have, no one's had the heart to tell me, and so I'm walking around as delusional as most people, which is a blessing. I definitely never want to stop growing, so hopefully I won't.
Who is the Becky that your clients do not see?
Well, as I got a lot of feedback in my early days, there isn't a whole lot of Becky that my clients do not see. And by that I mean I am irreverent, I am playful, I am serious. I'm better at being serious when I'm supposed to be serious. But I am not one of these people who believes in nor exercises compartmentalization. I am who I am no matter where I go. And so I think that's good, because if I run into people in different places, it's not like I have to put on a different visage and show up as someone else. I think people want you to be who you are and want you to be genuine and authentic. And so I'm still super direct. I'm not afraid to tell people who I am or what I do. Even if it involves Burning Man, it's cool. It's all on the table. Which may, by the way, be inappropriate for people who have higher boundaries for privacy. And I recognize that.
For those who don't know about Burning Man, what is it?
It is a temporary community that springs up on Bureau of Land Management land outside of Reno, Nevada, for approximately 1 week every year. It is focused on art, music, community. There are many principles that guide that temporary community, so we have a shared ethics code, as it were, around radical self-reliance and radical self-expression, immediacy, things like this that kind of keep everybody oriented and aligned. But really, every year you go, it's different, and it is 80,000 people, and it's massively organized. It's organized chaos and spontaneity.
How many years have you been going, Becky?
This will be my 4th.
So you're board chair of KIPP Charlotte. Tell us about KIPP and why it's important to you.
KIPP is a national network of free public college preparatory schools. We focused on kids in the K through 12 system who come from educationally underserved neighborhoods. And what that means is, for whatever reason, resources, etc., their local neighborhood school isn't serving them or giving them the choice-filled life that it should be giving them. So KIPP's goal is really ultimately to put ourselves out of business. But until that happens, what we do is build these schools that kids come into, and they're taught that there is no limit. They're taught that it doesn't matter where you come from or what you look like. Possibility is yours, and it's just incumbent upon how hard you work. We teach our kids character skills like grit, like confidence, things that help them believe in themselves, like effort actually does matter. Abilities are not fixed. If you work harder, you will get more out of this life. We help them see that community is really important. Our school here has a motto of Ubuntu. I am what I am because of what we all are. So we also teach them the importance of teaming and collaboration. But really, it's giving them the opportunity to live up to their full potential starting at a very young age.
Many years from now, when you look back on your life, what is the life that you will have wanted to live?
You know, it's funny. I was at the University of Georgia the other day. I got an award from the university, and what I told the people in that room is that I wanted to be President Moorhead when I grew up. And what I meant by that is to see somebody who has had such an amazing impact on so many other people's lives, and those people are happy and they're successful, however they define success. They are feeling really awesome about where they are. I would love to have been even a small part of that for as many people as possible.
Thank you, Becky.
Thanks, Mark.
Dr. Becky Winkler is a partner at Green Peak Partners, a leadership acceleration firm focused on helping companies foster the leadership required to grow and scale. She graduated from the University of Georgia's honors program, earning degrees in psychology, women's studies, and Chinese. Becky was inducted into UGA's 2015 Class of 40 Under 40 for exemplary accomplishments in her field, and in 2017 was the youngest person to receive the Jerry W. Moorhead Award, which is given to an exceptional alumna of the honors program. She earned her M.A. and Ph.D. in industrial organizational psychology from DePaul University. And now, a personal word. When I listen to Becky talk about animating talent, I'm reminded of the 18th century scientists Luigi Galvani and Franz Mesmer, whose work introduced the words galvanize and mesmerize. Luigi Galvani was an Italian biologist and surgeon who lived in the late 1700s, who became fascinated by the new science of electricity and its possible applications in medicine. One night in 1780, Galvani was dissecting a dead frog when his scalpel, which had been charged with static electricity, caused a spark in the frog's sciatic nerve and caused the frog's leg to kick as if it were alive. Galvani soon devoted himself to the relationship between electricity and animation, or what became the fields of bioelectricity or electrophysiology, or what I like to call the currents of life. To galvanize now means to excite someone into action. Franz Mesmer was a German physician who also lived and worked in the late 18th century. Mesmer theorized that there is a natural transfer of energy between all animate beings, and this energy could be harnessed and directed to restore health and vitality. He also examined the nervous system of dissected frogs, and by placing brass hooks in their spinal columns and leaving them outside in a storm, he studied what he called animal magnetism. To mesmerize now means to attract and captivate. Tales of the work of Galvani and Mesmer inspired a young writer named Mary Godwin. Mary Godwin was an English novelist and dramatist who lived at the turn of the 19th century. She was the daughter of the political philosopher William Godwin and feminist thinker Mary Wollstonecraft. Mary Godwin later married the poet Percy Shelley. In the summer of 1816, Mary Godwin and Percy Shelley spent a summer near Lake Geneva with Lord Byron and other writers and luminaries. The friends spent their time writing, boating on the lake, and talking late into the night. The weather in Geneva was particularly bad that summer, filled with dark and stormy nights. Sitting around a campfire, the writers amused themselves with ghost stories, which prompted Lord Byron to propose that each writer pen their own ghoulish tale for publication. Mary Godwin struggled with what to write. One mid-June evening, the discussion turned to the very nature of life itself, and Godwin was soon unable to sleep. As the others went to bed, she became possessed with an idea. She wrote furiously in her diary, quote, "Perhaps a corpse could be reanimated. Galvanism had given token to such things," end quote. We know Mary Godwin today as Mary Shelley, author of Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus, a tale of talent brought back to life. In her consultancy practice today, Becky Winkler brings talent to life. She galvanizes and mesmerizes. She sparks life with a magnetism that inspires. I'm Mark Paris, and you've been listening to On Life and Meaning. Thank you to my amazing partners, Andy Go, producer of the show, and to Chris Curtin, art and media director. We are supported by friends and listeners to this podcast. Please visit us at onlifeandmeaning.com and become a patron of the show. Thank you for listening.